The first time it happened, I thought I was hallucinating. You would too if your living room suddenly started rearranging itself while you were binge-watching late-night cooking shows. What the actual hell? I muttered as the sleek modern coffee table I bought last month morphed before my eyes into the scratched-up IKEA monstrosity I'd finally replaced after years of service. The flat-screen TV flickered, shrinking several inches and growing a bulkier frame. My phone buzzed. It was midnight exactly, and according to the suddenly outdated calendar on the wall, it was now 2023. My name is Alex Reeves, and my house has a time management problem. I'm not talking about being fashionably late. I mean that every night at exactly midnight, my entire house shifts 1 year backward in time. The furniture rearranges itself, technology downgrades, and the expired yogurt I threw out last week reappears in my fridge with a week left before its expiration date. Talk about recycling. The second night, I was prepared, or thought I was. I sat cross-legged in the center of my living room with a notebook documenting every change as the clock struck 12. The walls shuddered. Family photos on the wall changed poses slightly. My phone pinged with year-old text messages from people I hadn't spoken to in months. And then I heard the scratching at the back door. When I opened it, there was Ripley, my golden retriever who died of cancer 14 months ago. She bounded in, all wagging tail and doggy kisses, completely oblivious to the fact that she should be nothing more than a cherished memory and an urn of ashes on my bookshelf. Ripley? My voice cracked as she nuzzled my hand, warm and alive and impossible. How are you here, girl? That's when I understood. I wasn't hallucinating. My house wasn't just changing appearance, it was actually traveling backward in time. 1 year, every midnight. Of course, I tried to leave. Wouldn't you? I packed a bag the next day, threw it in my car, and drove to a hotel 20 miles away. I checked in, took a shower, and was just settling in to watch some mindless TV when the clock hit 11:59 p.m. At exactly midnight, I blinked and found myself back in my living room, bag still packed beside me as my house shifted another year into the past. 2022 now. Apparently, whatever temporal anomaly had my house in its grip also had me firmly in its clutches. This is cosmically unfair, I said to no one in particular. I didn't even get to use the hotel's fancy shampoo. Over the next nights, I mapped the rules of my bizarre situation. 1. At midnight, everything shifts back 1 year. Exactly 1 year. 2. I cannot physically leave the property between 11:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. Trust me, I tried. Multiple times. It's like hitting an invisible wall. 3. Anyone or anything that was in the house during that specific moment in the past appears. They act normal, like nothing's wrong, unaware they're temporal echoes. 4. By morning, everything returns to normal, 2024 normal, but the next night, we jump back to 2021 instead of 2022. That's how I found myself listening to my father's voice again on the 5th night, when the house shifted back to 2019. Alex, you need to grow up and take some responsibility. His voice carried up the stairs, the same argument we'd had a few months before he died of a heart attack. I sat on my bed, knees pulled up to my chest, listening to a ghost lecture me about my life choices. The worst part wasn't the lecture. It was knowing how little time he had left and being unable to warn him. I tried, of course. Ran downstairs in my pajamas and told him he needed to see a doctor, that his heart wasn't right. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind, laughed it off, and continued complaining about how I dropped out of law school to find myself. Just like he had the first time around. When morning came and everything reset to 2024, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee that tasted like ash, wondering how many more ghosts I'd have to face as the house kept shifting backward. That's when I noticed the note on my refrigerator. Written in handwriting that wasn't mine. We need to talk. Tonight. E. I hadn't written it. No one had been in my house, at least no one from 2024. And who the hell was E? I spent the day in a fog, going through the motions at my graphic design job, designing logos for companies while my mind wandered to temporal physics and mysterious notes. That night, as midnight approached and my house prepared to shift back to 2018, I waited in the living room. The furniture began to change, the air grew colder, and suddenly I wasn't alone. A woman stood by the window, her back to me. She wore a faded blue sweater I found vaguely familiar. "Who are you?" I demanded. When she turned around, my blood froze. I recognized her face. It was older than in the photos, with new lines around the eyes, but unmistakable. "Hello, Alex," she said. "I'm Elena. Your sister." I shook my head. I don't have a sister. But even as I said it, fragments of forgotten memories flickered at the edges of my consciousness, like a dream you can't quite recall upon waking. Her smile was sad. That's the problem. You should have. What do you mean I should have a sister? I demanded, my voice unsteady. The house had settled into 2018, the year my father had his first minor heart attack, the warning sign we all ignored. Elena moved toward me and I took a step back. I died before you were born, Alex. I was your parents' first child. Crib death. They never told you about me. That's impossible. You look older than me. I am older than you. Or I would have been. She gestured around the shifting house. But this isn't about me being dead. It's about why your house is traveling backwards in time. I laughed a sharp, humorless sound. Great. Please enlighten me, ghost sister I never knew I had. I'm not exactly a ghost, Elena said, sitting down on what was now a hideous floral couch my ex had picked out. More like a temporal echo with consciousness. And your house isn't just randomly traveling back in time. It's trying to fix something. Fix what? I asked, reluctantly sitting across from her. You, she said simply. Over the next hour, as the house remained stable in 2018, Elena explained that she had been experiencing these shifts for longer than I had, but from a different angle. While I was traveling backward through my own timeline, she had been watching from outside it, unable to interact until now. Something's wrong with your timeline, Alex. The house knows it. That's why it's pulling you backward to find the divergence point. The house knows? Houses don't know things. They're made of wood and nails and regrettable wallpaper choices. Elena smiled. This one does. Haven't you wondered why you bought it so impulsively 3 years ago? Why the price was so surprisingly reasonable? This house exists in a temporal fault line. It's sensitive. So my real estate bargain is actually an interdimensional fixer-upper. Fantastic. I rubbed my temples. Let's say I believe you. What divergence point are we looking for? I don't know exactly, she admitted. But I think it has something to do with Dad. The next night, the house shifted to 2017. We found ourselves in the middle of a birthday party, my birthday party. I watched my younger self blow out candles while my father recorded it on his phone. My mother smiled beside him, but her eyes held a distance I hadn't noticed at the time. Happy birthday, sweetheart, my mother said to past me, her voice carrying the slightest tremor. Present me turned to Elena. I don't understand. Everything seems normal. Elena was watching our mother intently. This was right before she started the affair, wasn't it? I stared at her. How did you know about that? Because I've been watching. Your mother's affair, Dad's heart problems, your decision to drop out of law school, they're all connected somehow. Each night, the house took us further back. 2016, I watched myself struggle through law school, miserable but determined to make my father proud. 2015, my parents fighting in hushed tones in the kitchen, thinking no one could hear. 2014, my college graduation, everyone smiling for photos while tension simmered beneath the surface. We're getting closer, Elena said on the night we reached 2013. Can you feel it? I could. The air in the house felt heavier, charged with potential. That night, I witnessed a conversation between my parents I'd never been privy to. We can't keep doing this, Richard, my mother said to my father. Alex deserves to know the truth. There's nothing to know, Catherine, my father insisted. The past is the past. Let it stay buried. When morning came and the house reset to 2024, I found another note on my refrigerator, 3 more nights. 2012, 2011, and then 2010. Each night, Elena and I watched as family secrets began to unravel before us. My father's increasing prescription medications. My mother's hushed phone calls. And finally, the night everything changed. December 14, 2010. I was in college, not home for this particular argument. But in the shifting house, Elena and I watched as my parents faced each other in the kitchen. I found the letters, Richard, my mother said, throwing a bundle of envelopes onto the table. You've been in contact with her all this time. My father's face went pale. Catherine, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been talking to your ex-girlfriend for 20 years? That you have another child you never told me about? I looked at Elena, who was watching the scene with tears streaming down her face. I'm not your sister, Alex, she whispered. I'm your half-sister. And I didn't die. Dad just chose your mother over mine. As the truth spilled out in that kitchen from 13 years ago, the house began to shake. Pictures fell from walls. Furniture slid across floors. The temporal fault line was reacting to the revelation. This is it, Elena said. The divergence point. Dad chose to bury the truth, to pretend I never existed. That choice fractured something in the timeline, in him, in your family, in you. What do we do? I asked, steadying myself against a wall as the house trembled. You have to decide, Alex. The house brought you back to fix things, but only you can choose how. As the clock inched toward morning, I understood my options. I could let the timeline continue as it had, built on lies and omissions that slowly poisoned my family. Or I could change it. I need to talk to him, I said. The real him in 2024. But how? We always reset to the present in the morning. Elena reached for my hand. The house brought us together across time for a reason. I think if we both focus on what needs to be fixed, we can choose where we return to. As dawn approached, Elena and I sat in the center of the living room, hands clasped, concentrating on my father, not as he was in the past, but as he could be in my present. The house shuddered one final time and light flooded through the windows. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting in a hospital room. My father lay in the bed, older than in our time jumps, but very much alive. The cardiac monitor beeped steadily beside him. "Alex," he said groggily. "What time is it?" I checked my phone. It was 7:13 a.m., December 15th, 2024. Somehow, the timeline had changed. My father hadn't died 5 years ago. He'd survived. "Dad," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "We need to talk about Elena." His eyes widened, then filled with tears. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that it's time to stop burying the past. For all our sakes." When I returned home that evening, the house felt different, settled somehow. On the refrigerator was one final note. "Thank you. Timeline restored. E." That night, at midnight, I waited nervously in the living room. The clock struck 12. The furniture stayed put. The air remained warm. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Coffee tomorrow? I've waited a lifetime to know my brother. Elena." I smiled and texted back, "Absolutely. Sometimes the only way forward is to go back and face what we've tried so hard to forget." My house knew that before I did. And now finally, time can move in the right direction again.